We are delighted that you're joining us for another podcast of Wake Up Align, and it is the podcast for chiropractors, where we get to talk about chiropractic lifestyle, and topics of interest. You can contact us through our email, and that is mailbag@amcfamily.com. Got a very exciting podcast set up for everybody today. We're going to have some fun. I am your host, Dr. Shannon McMurtry. I'm here with my good friend and partner, Tom Owen. How you doing today, Tom?
I am doing fantastic. Excited about what we get to share today. I mean, there's just so much good stuff happening inside this aligned family. And I doubt one show would be enough to cover it all, but excited to get started with it.
What I'm excited about on this show is you don't have to be a AMC Aligned family member to get benefit out of this. I know as a chiropractor, just knowing that other people were doing well and succeeding and overcoming in spite of circumstances, very inspirational for me, right? That helped me through those tougher times. And we've wrapped up another very productive year. And we have literally more, we call them honorable mentions. That's our term inside of our company, but we have more honorable mentions that we have time to actually cover today. So he and I have gone through the list. We've picked out a few that really speak to us, and are excited to share that with you today. Like I said, I hope it inspires you, it motivates you, it keeps you tuned in and on fire for what you do for your community, for your patients, and then this wonderful vocation. So,
you know what that's called, Shannon?
What's that?
The reason why you said it made a difference for you back in the day, and it makes a difference for not just aligned members, it gives, for all chiropractors, because it feeds into one of the top three emotionally motivating factors of life. The fact number one, strongest factor, is love. Love is the most powerful, force on earth. It's the force that knows no force. But right behind that is hope and fear. Now, fear can be a motivating,
sure, positively
motivating factor. But I think most people that are listening here today have more than enough fear in their life, right?
I agree, yeah.
There's people here that are just afraid of what other people might think or might say if they were successful, right? But the one that you're tuning in on, and the reason that we want to celebrate it is hope. There's hope in knowing that there is a path forward, there is prosperity, and it doesn't have to be giant wins.
No.
I want to celebrate. It doesn't have to be, hey, somebody did $1 million last year.
Right.
It has nothing to do with it. I would much rather celebrate myself, somebody that doubled a practice that was struggling, that just getting off the ground, or they're in a small space, they've got these challenges, they're in a tough market, and you've been mentoring for 20 plus years alongside me. Which is easier to do, Shannon, to double a practice that was already doing 30,000 or a practice doing 3,000?
Double of 30 for sure.
It's a much easier to double a practice doing 30 compared to 3. So when we celebrate that, somebody goes from 5,000 to 10,000, that's a big celebration. And let me tell you, the business world, the banking world doesn't understand that kind of growth. Right? So when you go to a business plan and you go, I'm going to double in 90 days, or I'm going to double within 6 months, the banker doesn't understand that.
Right.
So again, lots to celebrate. And I kind of took the microphone and ran with that, but hope is a powerful factor. So I hope today, as we share some of these good wins and celebrations, that it provides some hope to those listeners out there, no matter where we find you.
I'm glad you shared that, because one of the persons on my list that I want to really talk about today is not the traditional person we would shout out. This person actually had a drop in their overall production in their clinic. But when you consider what they were up against and the decisions that they made leading into their year, it was incredible what they were able to do. And that it only dropped by a fraction of what you would see it outside of that support and that knowing those principles and those fundamentals. So yeah, it's been a great year for mentors. I know that it's easy to talk about those offices that are going into the $1 million plus range. And I'm so grateful that I have more on my roster now than I've ever had before in my mentoring. And those are easy to talk about. But the people who have a struggle that they've overcome, they hold a very special place in my heart too, even if they're not at that, super successful level. So you want me to start?
Sure.
All right.
Let's jump in.
I want to start with a wonderful young doctor, Dr. Jenny Benton. Dr. Jenny practices in Terre Haute, Indiana, and she has a very non-traditional path to her clinic. So she started as an associate with somebody that you know very well, a Dr. Amber Wellman. Remember Dr. Amber?
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Years ago. So she started with us as an associate in that office, and that's where she was exposed to our principles, our system, our family, that kind of thing. So when she got out of that and went to do her own thing, she joined a practice as a independent contractor. It was already a big practice with several doctors, and once she got into that structure, she said, I need that AMC Align family. So she contacted us. And that structure was good to a degree. And then the partnership or the independent contractors in that particular office started to break down. And, that one went that way, this one went that way. And it got to the point where she was basically the only chiropractor in that building. And the building had mold and there was just a lot of issues going on. So she left that building, went to another office and rented space in this office. And this doctor had told her, hey, I'm hoping to retire in a few years. I'd like to sell this office to you. And what he didn't realize is she had a support network. She had me. So I said, that's great in theory, but we're going to have to verify numbers. We're going to have to go through our due diligence. We can't just accept that his price is what it should be. And it was interesting, Tom, because the more it progressed to that, let's draw up a contract and let's set our price and our terms and all that, the more she requested information to verify, the angrier this doctor got. And he showed up one day before Christmas. This was in December, before Christmas.
Of 22.
This was 21. 21.
Okay.
Showed up one day. I'm not going to provide this information for you. And in fact, you're kicked out. So right before the holidays.
Nice Christmas present.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Real ethical guy, right? Mm. You could have trusted, you could just imagine the price he was asking for what he had. Anyways, kicked her out right before the holidays. Any of you listening, if you've ever looked for rental space and to secure your own commercial space, you know that there's a time between Thanksgiving and New Year's when there's not a lot going on. In fact, a lot of real estate agents are like, there's nothing going to be happening until the new year. Everybody's kind of sitting on what they got. So she was kicked out, like literally into the cold. Did not let that deter her. She got up off the ground. She said, I got to find a place so I can serve my patients. Had a office secured and started the process of getting moved in within a week. It was on a shoestring, right? She had like basically a portable table in there, right? I mean, very bare bones, but she had a place to treat her patients. And then that started her in her own clinic, really for the first time in her career. Okay. And that was really a blessing to her. It forced her out of the nest. It also forced her to stand on her own, which that can be challenging, right? There's a lot of fear, a lot of things you have to overcome with that. But what I'm so proud of her about is as 2021 closed in this new situation, she realized that the structure she had in the office in terms of her fee schedule and that kind of thing, it just wasn't working. Overhead is higher than it's ever been. She's got great staff that need to be compensated. She has to take money home to help support the family. And so she, with a lot of fear, like a lot of people have, said, well, I'm going to trust you. You've been telling me for years I need to change that structure, so I'm going to trust you. And I'm going to change it. But I want you to know I'm scared to death. I said, Dr. Benton, that's fine. Everybody's scared when we talk about this, when we think about doing it. But she did it. She did it successfully. It was as predicted, not even a ripple of disruption in her clinic or her patient visits. You know the story because you've done it multiple times yourself. For you listeners, he's over there nodding his head. And this year, in spite of some very heartbreaking personal circumstances that I won't go into, she had her very best year ever. Best year ever in total collections, best year ever in collection visit average.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and you can just start to see that she's putting it together with a whole new level of confidence, a whole new level of optimism, and knowing I can do this.
Yeah. There's a element of strength from people that overcome those kind of circumstances, right? Mm-hmm. I know you and I were talking about class material we're going to do in the future here, coming up on persistence. There's a confidence that comes from people that overcome those kind of circumstances that can't be replaced or can't be created when something's just handed to someone, right? Correct. When you just fall into the right scenario and all of a sudden you're clicking on cylinders that you don't have the same appreciation. So I'll assure you, next time I see her, that's going to be a different person that I'm going to see walking, because there's going to be just an air of confidence. She already knows. Yep. We all have our stories. I've got mine. We can give, we can do Tom's testimonial sometime of that's part of the reason why I like what I do, like what I'm doing, because I understand exactly how that feels, overcoming circumstances that would crush most people that you never come back from. So when I hear those stories, I'm so much more interested in talking about the Jenny Bentons than the practices that have added this component or that component, and all of a sudden they're adding $200,000 and $300,000, and it was kind of easy because they bought it through marketing and things of that nature. No, that's a real business that she's building now, right? Yep. It's not going to fall out from underneath her feet because she's building on a solid foundation. And her PVA is amazing. Like, once a patient starts in her office, she doesn't lose those patients. They stay with her for years. So this year we're working on that, the new patient thing and the referrals, and really helping stabilize the front side. But because the PVA is so strong and she's built that business on a very firm foundation, she only needs a fraction of new patients in additional to really take her practice to her dream level. So it's very exciting. And, your dad said he identifies as a cork. For you listeners, what that means is, the cork can bob on the waves of life and always have its head above water. But if you put a weight on it, it's going to blip, 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 drop down. All you need to do is release that weight, and that cork going to go right back to the surface and live again. And that was your dad. He embodied the cork. And for me, Dr. Jenny Benton embodies that as well, right? Through all the circumstances, through all the bad stuff that's happened, she just kept pushing forward and rising to the top. So there's no stopping that girl. We've got a lot of stories like that inside of AMC. I know you're going to cover some of them, but like I said, those are my favorite. Can we do another one? Absolutely. Yeah. Let's just keep rolling through the list. Got another one, Dr. Tricia Marquez. Now, Dr. Tricia has been a AMC Aligned family member for a while now, and I've been working with her, 4 years, 5 years. Wonderful, wonderful person. And, but you know how sometimes people they're so giving and they're so gracious and they're so heartful that sometimes it's hard for them to set boundaries and set expectations and lead a team. You got to have that accountability. You got to have that authority. And sometimes that's challenging for the real heart person to have. You've never had that issue. So thank you, Shannon. You're welcome. Yeah. But Dr. Marquez came into 2022 realizing that she had to
face those scary parts of leadership and not just always hope that the team would respond to the carrot or the team would respond to the vision, but that the team would also have to be held accountable. And the accountability part is the challenging part for her. So in addition to that, she decided at the end of 2021 to convert to a mostly private pay office. Okay. And on top of that, she was on board with a fee increase. And then as 22 developed, she decided to remodel her office, right? So she went from one real hard challenge to a scary thing, and then another scary thing, and then something that's going to turn the physical structure of the office just inside out. And she's been working so hard at that leadership stuff, but the staff didn't respond. And you would expect that, right? Because the staff has been trained and conditioned to expect a certain way of operations in the clinic and leadership and just relating to them. And now Dr. Tricia wants to set a different standard and expect more. So to say that the staff didn't accept that easily would be a bit of an understatement. In fact, all of the staff members didn't remain in the office, and we knew that that was a possibility going into that. Didn't matter because she has to be that leader if she's going to take her office to that next level. And this is the one I was sharing with you earlier, that she dropped 10% in her total revenue and her total productions, right? Normally we would never talk about that, right? Oh, well, you had a rough year, you'll do better next year. You know, that's the pep talk. She's going to do better this year. There's no doubt about it. But when you consider every day having to face the fear of her own leadership and when the uncertainty of what would happen with a team and that kind of stuff, when you think about the conversion over to a private pay model, the increase of the fee structure, remodeling the clinic, and the last part is she and I weren't on the same page with that transition to the private pay and the fee increase. There was some miscommunication between her and I. So we had about 3 months where, for all intents and purposes, we were spinning our wheels on that. And that was really my fault because I didn't do my due diligence. I just assumed. So we got that corrected. So if you think about it, she really only had 9 months of a 12-month year to really make this thing happen. So total revenue went down 10%. Yes, it did. But here's where she had the winners. Set an all-time record for her collection ratio. She collected well over 95% for the year. She had never done that in her career. First time really ever that she's legitimately getting paid for what she does for people rather than what she's doing to people. And her PVA has also set a brand new record, right? Patients didn't leave in droves. Patients actually responded to all that change. And she has a staff member that is ready to move on in this new era of leadership. And I'm very, very excited about what she's got in store for 2023. But they're in Tempe, Arizona. And her name is Dr. Tricia Marquez. Just super duper proud of her and that journey and just sticking with it, having the temerity, the audacity to stick with it all year long. That's something very special.
I hope everyone that's listening today realizes that, you know, sometimes we just have to stop and celebrate, right? So this show is about celebrating the wins of chiropractors. So, you know, we're not going to do a lot of teaching moments today, but there's a lot of teaching and lessons
very true
in the stories that we're telling, you know. So hopefully you're finding these stories and what we're sharing, because I bet anything, if I look over here at our producer, Snacks, he's going to say we're up against the clock already and we've only told 2 stories, you know. But I 10 minutes, he said. So I've literally got a whole list over here. So telling all the stories would take too long. And I know you've got some more that you want to share. So I'm just going to give a couple of quick shout outs, if that's all right.
Sure.
And folks that I don't think we've ever done shout outs before, but one that's really close to my heart is Dr. Jason Stevenson. Dr. Stevenson, I don't know if you know this or not, Dr. Shannon, his connection to the AMC Align family backs up to right about the time that you came on board.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you knew that, but he was an associate, or coming right out of school. He was either interning there or he was an associate, whatever, with an office that was associated with AMC way back when. And I guess to tell a good part of the story is way back then, he watched what they did, and they, even though if I gave you their name, you'd go, I remember them. They didn't do any of the AMC system.
Oh, wow.
But he thought they were doing the AMC system.
Sure.
So he had the whole idea of that visual of, well, if that's what it is,
I don't want no part of it.
I don't want anything. I don't want any part of it. And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And he went out and, long story short, in his practice in the same town and struggled for the next 10, 15 years, whatever it was, and then kept getting referred to Align.
Sure.
Kept getting referred. You got to come. And he was like, man, I've already done that. I've seen that. That is not what I want. And eventually the influences, he finally came and checked it out. So it's been quite a journey, just a transformation just from that mindset of, and then he has just been very steady. I remember when he re-engaged several years back, I told him, I'm like, Dr. Stevenson, if you'll latch on, I'm like, you've got all the components. You've got the market, you've got the location, you've got the capabilities, you got to stay persistent. So when I read this honorable mention of, this is 20 plus years in the making.
Wow.
Now, granted, he's already had best ever years. So please, listeners, understand that this growth isn't just, okay, he did it this year. No, he did it the year before and he did it the year before. He keeps consistently growing, but he increased his collections last year, or 2022, $106,000. So he went up collected another 106. But here's the big one. His visit average, his PV collections, collection average per visit went up to $92.
Nice.
So he hit 92. But guess where that came from in 1 year? Moved up from 68.
68 to 92.
68 to 92 in the 1 year. So
$24 per patient visit in the office increase.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sure there's even more to that story that his mentor, Dr. Beagley, could share. But when I saw that come across our CRM, when I saw that come through, I was like, oh man, I got to celebrate that. So that's my one. Let
me add on to that for just a second here. I had no idea that his exposure to what we do, our system, our family, goes all the way back to when I was brand new and starting, which makes me wonder, how does he look so young and I look so old? What is he doing that I'm not doing? Oh, no. I'm working with you. That's the difference. I'm really, really proud of Dr. Jason. And that's a great story. Had no idea.
Yeah, he's in Coleman, Alabama.
Coleman,
Coleman, Alabama.
Oh, I know who he was with now. Yes, sir. I know who he was with.
I thought that might give you a hint, but.
Well, the other thing about that is, what we do, we know what we do. We know our worth. We know our impact to our family members, those precious members that we serve. But there's a lot of corruption out there and misunderstanding and myths about who we are, what we do, why we do, all that sort of stuff.
Amen.
And he was operating under that corrupted thinking, corrupted model. So, of course, he's not receptive to it. He's completely resistant. And if you're listening to this and you don't know who we are, you think you know who we are, you've heard some rumor or myth, and you need to check it out for real, pick up the phone and call. Because we don't have anything to sell you. We're going to be us. And if you're a candidate and you are in alignment with who we are, great. If you're not, blessings to you. We wish you the very best. But it's just like the chiropractor in their office. Oh, I've heard chiropractors do this, do that. How many times does a chiropractor get so frustrated? If you just let me talk to you, show you what we do, what makes us different, help you understand that what you've heard is all lies. We're in the same boat. It's just, just the different type of service.
Well, you got to take into account where you're getting that information to begin with.
Very good.
Right?
Yeah, very
Number
true.
one, there's no competitor out there that's, lining up against us is ever going to say good things. So just be aware of take account of the source. But the other thing is, if you lump us into management, I would love to throw that to our members sometime. Have our members come on the show and go, is Aligned a management company? Is it a consultant company? Yeah. And they would all, argue, absolutely not. It's nothing like it. It's amazing. But when you get lumped in, you're management, you're consulting, then you're already tainted. That's right. Because you're trying to think of us from a different perspective or a different light. So
yeah, management and consultant folks don't reach out to their members in going through some hard times and say, hey, we're praying for you. And I know 2 or 3 times this very week, that kind of thing happens.
Absolutely.
So, enough about the commercial. Go ahead with your next one.
Oh, I just have some quick shout outs and then I know you got stories to tell, but Holly Cox, Dr. Holly Cox, grew $147,000 this past year.
Wow.
Isn't that awesome?
That's awesome.
That is just great.
Love it for her.
And Dr. Newell, up 703 patient visits.
Up 703 patient visits.
Went up 703 patient visits. Got married in 22, honeymooned in 22, and is expecting their first child in 23. So
now, if you can get married and have an increase in patient visits, you're doing something right.
Well, you're motivated.
Yeah, you are for sure. Yeah. That's probably the reason she's approaching us about our CA coaching program now. She's probably at a level where it's like, we got to really invest in that team to make it efficient. Yeah. Great. That's a great share.
Last but not least, and I'll throw it back to you. Hey, we just got to give a shout out to our own Dr. Lindsay Johnston.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Just amazing. Can you believe that she's right at the 10-year mark since she graduated?
Oh, my goodness.
Talking about feeling old.
Yeah, that's it.
I think she graduated in 2013.
Wow.
But opened, 7-8 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark. But she just eclipsed again. I don't know if this is her first year eclipsing it or her second, but she collected just right at 1.15 million. But that doesn't include the great work that she's doing with her associate.
That's right.
Right.
Dr. Rachel Beveridge. Yeah.
Rachel Beveridge, and combined with Rachel Beveridge, I would have to think they're pushing 1.5.
Yep.
And so 2 young ladies that we're both very proud of.
Wasn't Dr. Lindsay the person that we spoke with, 2 or 3 years ago? And we said, hey, what's the stats on your graduating class? Wasn't it like 2 people or 5 people were still in active full-time practice?
They were on their own. So I think they graduated, and again, these are stats that I don't have right with me, but I think they had about 65 or so in their graduating class. And at that time, her and one other were the only ones that she was aware of that were still in solo private practice.
Oh my goodness.
So
2 out of 65.
2 out of 65 were standing firm in their own solo practice.
Yeah. You and I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. We all have a lot of work to do, including the listeners.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
If people don't know that they don't know because they don't know that what they don't know. So if we don't share it with them, they don't know that there's that hope out there available, right? That's what hope is.
Amen.
Hope is the anticipation of something better to come. And if they don't know it, how they can have that? How can they even have hope?
There's a postscript also on her story, maybe a prescript, honestly. I actually happen to know the doctor that was in her town. I actually worked with that young man and middle-aged man. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Anyways, he said, oh, this market is tough. I said, what's so tough about your market? He goes, well, unemployment is outrageous here. I don't know if there was, that part of that time in the economy, or if that was just maybe something had closed up in the area. Anyway, I said, well, what's the unemployment rate? He goes, it's around 11, 13%. I was like, okay. So that means about 87 to 89% of the people are employed. Dead silent. Well, that doctor got out of that market about what you would expect. Dr. Lindsay comes into that market with a completely different concept, a completely different belief system, a completely different level of hope and willing to work.
And work ethic.
And look at there. In the market that is a tough one.
Hope and persistence.
Amen.
Give me those two components, and we're going to win a lot of those fights.
We're going to talk more about persistence sometime in the future, I know. So I'm just so proud of Dr. Lindsay. That's awesome. Good.
I got one that I know is on your list. Yeah. I want to make sure that we get it into this show. So, because I'm so super proud of this doctor, but I know you've got the notes in front of you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Dr. Thad Roush.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's an amazing story that took place this year. And that's a long-term AMC member.
It is.
Right. And I know what it took for him to take these steps that transpired in 2022. So why don't you tell that story?
Yeah. So Dr. Thad he's approaching, he's getting very close to 20 years with us. And he opened up outside of the Cincinnati area. It's a bedroom community in Ohio there. And for years, we've been watching his stats, a typical type of chiropractic model where it's a family type of practice, not heavy in PI or anything else, but was affiliated with the insurance networks. And every year you could see the reimbursement percentage for the major medical work he was doing just dropped. I mean, it was consistent. 2% this year, 4% that year. Drop. So he and I had some very tough conversations, tough for him, easy for me, that, hey, the writing's on the wall. This ship is going down and you will have a decision to make. It's not one that you can avoid. And if you're afraid of it or you're not so sure about it, doesn't matter. This ship is going down. So we approached the end of, let me get my timeline right, the end of 21. And I can't remember what happened, Tom, but he had a breaking point with it. And he said, that's it. I can't do this. I think I know what it was. We calculated his overhead per visit and his average collections per visit for that major medical demographic. And he was actually subsidizing their care, right? It cost him more in overhead per visit than he was making per visit from that demographic. He said, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. And he is a classic overthinker, right? He will process. And, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying that. He wears that badge proudly. But he said, I can't do this anymore. So we ended 2021 with a defined timeline on how to do this, do it the right way, and have it make the minimum amount of impact in his office. And to his credit, he followed it to the letter. But there's still that nervousness, right? Every doctor that's gone through this transition, there's fear, there's uncertainty. I don't know how this is going to look on the other side. And I don't get nervous about it because I do it all the time. But he had all the nerves, he had all the fear, all the what ifs were going on in his mind. Well, here's the results. In 2022, with a complete change to private pay after, a decade and a half of being in the insurance networks. Number one, new patients were increased. All right, so check that out. No insurance, no provider manual, but new patients were increased. Patient visits did not drop one bit. The clinic recorded its highest collection visit average that they'd ever had in their history. They set a record in their total collections for the year. And here's the key, because most doctors say, well, if I'm not in insurance, people aren't going to be able to accept my plans or afford my plans. His acceptance ratio, the number of patients who started care compared to the numbers who presented for consultation, completely unchanged from the years before. He's still clicking along in the 75% conversion ratio. And additionally, missed appointments were better, referrals, reactivations better. In no way was this office negatively affected by that decision, even with all the fear and all the other stuff going on in there.
So unpack that for the listeners,
okay,
Dr. Shannon, because if everyone doesn't understand how to read stats, this doctor went through what was the scary,
sure.
right? It's that, oh my gosh, how do I go private pay? He thought about it for years and years, and it finally got to a point that the breaking point, I can't do this anymore. So thankfully he had a mentor like yourself that executed the plan. But those stats that you just rattled off, there's some real keys. Did everyone hear what Dr. Shannon said? The patient visits stayed the same. The new patients went up, not down, and his collection visit average went up.
It
did everybody hear that? The collection visit average went up. He doesn't have to work any harder because he's still saying the same number of visits.
Right.
But his CVA went up, not down. So number one, he didn't repel new patients. When they call in and go, do you take Major Med? No, we're happy to do a super bill for you,
right.
blah, blah, blah. So he didn't repel new patients because his new patients went up. His patient visits plateaued or stayed the same so that they didn't leave in flocks. And yet the collection visit average per visit in the revenue for the practice went up.
Yeah.
So unpack that, just listeners, pay attention. We must know what we're doing. We might have an idea. We're not throwing stuff on the wall and seeing if it sticks around here.
Oh, absolutely. You don't make a change like that hoping and, hey, let's give this a shot. Let's see. There is a very defined plan on stair-stepping through that and doing it the right way. And he hit all those marks. And it wasn't just him. He has two wonderful staff members who were instrumental in this whole process. He's under our CA coaching arrangements as well. So they were getting mentorship at the same time. It was a team effort, but it was his decision to make and his fear to manage that really got us to that point.
That's awesome.
It is.
Really, I love that one.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to cover that one. Can we try to do one more?
Okay.
That I know that you shared with me before we started. Let's talk and give a shout out to the Porterfields.
Okay. All right. So Dr. Ryan Porterfield has a practice in Valparaiso.
And his wife.
And his wife isn't with the practice, but she's instrumental.
She's instrumental. Let's give Alicia her props.
Alicia, you do great work. We respect you very much. So Dr. Ryan is in Valparaiso, Indiana, just outside of Chicago, actually. And he is just a good dude. He's a good human, right? He likes to have fun. He's affable and friendly and whatever. And he trusts people, sometimes too much. And what happened in 2021, before 2022 hit, his long-term office manager, who he basically gave the keys to the office, like literally and figuratively to, she started going rogue. She started doing her own thing. And he didn't know about it. It was all hidden. And he brought in an associate. So he turned over the credentialing of that associate to her, and it never happened. So he got a notification from the networks, the insurance, that kind of stuff, that this person isn't credentialed. And we're talking about 6 figures worth of reimbursements. So at best, he and Alicia were looking at $100,000+ going back, being withdrawn out of their account because the insurance company didn't have to pay that. And at worst, being prosecuted for insurance fraud. All because he wasn't doing it malignantly, intentionally. He just didn't do any oversight. Well, you can imagine that hit the fan pretty hard, and there was a complete disruption inside of the office, as it should be. But that office manager didn't leave graciously. She took just about every staff member with her, turned them against the doctor, and only one stayed. I'm going to give her a special shout out here in just a moment. So we rolled into 2022 really with the most uncertainty he's ever had, beaten down, every day stressful. What's going to happen today? Am I going to get the letter that says the money's coming out? Am I going to get the letter that says to appear in court? And he has all the pressure financially now, like this clinic still has overhead, and I have.
He was close to throwing in the towel.
Multiple times in that first 6 months of the year, he said, I don't know if we're going to make it. And I knew that he would, just based on his stats. I mean, the numbers are one thing, but how you feel about your vocation is another. But I knew on the number side, we would make it based on what I was reading, but I didn't know where his head was and his mindset was. Let me tell you, to his credit, he pulled it all back together. He reined it in. He controlled his thinking. He wrapped his mind around that leadership role that he had to finally take on. And he doesn't want to be the bad guy, right? But sometimes as a boss, you have to say, these are my expectations. You're not living up. And he had to have some conversations with people, and those people didn't like it. So she pulls away most of the staff member, all but one. He hires more. And then 3 months later, he's getting rid of some of those because he didn't know how to lead people. We go through all this transition, and roughly about the 6 month mark, he says, we're going to make it. I got this together. So he ends the year. Oh my gosh, I just lost his stats, guys. Hold on. He ends the year. Here's the final numbers. All-time record in new patients. All-time record in his collection per patient visit average. All-time record in his collection ratio. And I just can't say enough about how proud I am, not of his result, Tom, but of his effort, right? He can always control his effort. Sometimes the results are variable on other things. But what he did in 2022, how he was pushed out of that nest of comfort and decided, I'm going to have to step up and run this thing. It's incredible. It's amazing. It's something that you can't take lightly because a lot of people refuse to do that. And I want to give a special recognition to Rachel, the CA, who stuck with him through that transition. At one time, she was the only CA in a very busy office with 2 doctors. She is an absolute gem. She is the Rock of Gibraltar in that clinic. And we are poised to hit, I don't know, between $800,000 and $1 million this year. That's his goal. And by God, we're going to hit it too.
And as we wrap this show up, there's another story that was much like where we started, the Jenny Benton story, right? You never know what your salt is until you go through it, right? And that'll never be able to be taken away from Dr. Ryan.
Absolutely right.
It's not the surviving it, it's the thriving in it, right? It's setting the course. I'm a boater, it's setting that course. And I can set the course on my compass when I go out to Jacksonville Inlet, go out to the first sea buoy, turn left or turn north and head towards Hilton Head. I can set the course, but I can't control the fact that there's shoals to the left, there's rocks to the right. I can't control that the wind is hitting me from the east or the west, or the tides pushing me or coming against me. I can't control the sea, the size of the sea. All I can control is my focus. Where am I going?
Right.
Come hell or high water, this is where I'm going. And the work ethic is the motor, right? It doesn't do any good to sit there and hold on to the helm and just try to hold my heading into the compass. I got to have some oomph behind it. I got to have some work ethic. I've got that persistence. So I am super proud of Dr. Ryan. And I tell you, I'm not the cause of it, Dr. Ryan. I want to make sure I want to go on record. I didn't cause this, but evidently I went to a birthday dinner for Dr. Ryan here when I was in Atlanta.
Right.
And evidently, this was all taking place while we were eating that steak dinner that night. And just a few days later is when the stuff hit the fan.
Yeah.
After that birthday dinner. So I just want to go on record. I didn't cause that mass exodus, but I met that whole team, and I'm sitting across the table from this office manager, and the whole time she's got that malice in her heart of what she was fully intending to do to that practice. Yeah. So I love Dr. Ryan and Alicia. They're two of my favorites, and I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't say enough. All right, well, that's going to do it for today. We are getting very bad looks from our producer because we are super over time, but I know I've enjoyed this. This has elevated my enthusiasm about what we're doing, and I live it every single day.
And I just hope that this episode is actually one of your favorites to listen to, because it should give you inspiration and hope that no matter what you're up against, no matter what you're dealing with, there is a path, and there is a help there for you, and that all should provide you hope for a brighter future, because chiropractic has it.
Every single person listening to this, go to wherever the platform you're listening to this podcast on, find that share button, send this link to a colleague. This needs to be heard. Follow our show. You can share it with friends, of course, and we'd love for you to contact us at mailbag@amcfamily.com. In addition, you're always invited to attend or join us at a summit. Of course, registration is required, and we would love for you to check out the loads of free content we provide to social media every single week. Until next time.